3 more days till Halloween, Halloween, Halloween. 3 more days till Halloween. Samantha Sloyan. Hey, what's up, everybody? We are here to talk about the fall of the House of Usher. There's 3 more days left until Halloween. You are watching the Lastercast. We are up to episodes 5 and 6 of Mike Flanagan's much talked about Fall of the House of Usher Netflix show. Danny, you messaged me something last night. Do you remember what you said?
Did the message go through? I don't even remember. Was it about remind you to talk about something?
No, you sent me a message about the show and you said, oh, those episodes, like.
Oh, yeah. That's where episodes 5 and 6 usually is when you get into peak Flanagan. I go back again. This show feels so wholly unique, but also because of the structure of it, reminds me so much of Hill House where you have this big family and each episode covers the overarching story, but focuses in on that one family character. That being said, it's very original, it's very new, but in Hill House, episodes 5 and 6 are where the series, I think, for many people go from, it's where Hill House went from, oh, there's this new cool horror series on Netflix, to, oh, that's going to be the horror series that people compare everything to from this day forward. And episodes 5 and 6 of Hill House are the Bent Neck Lady and then the Two Storms episode, with the like 20 plus minute tracking shots between two generations of actors and families at when the family converges at the funeral for Nell. And episodes 5 and 6 of The Fall of the House of Usher kind of felt like that, where I felt like any little bugaboos or hangups or nitpicks that I may have had at all through episodes 1 through 4, which were minimal, if there. Everything just kind of melted away, and you just took a step back and went, "Oh fuck! What? This is unfreaking believable." There are at least several moments that we're going to talk about that that are going to stick with me. Dialogue scenes, just incredible moments of acting. This is what Flanagan does best, is he assembles this amazing cast, his Flana family around him. And then, even though he picks them off one by one, he gives all of them these just juicy characters. Like we were talking about how, like, wow, like Kate Siegel, she died in episode 3. I mean, like we wanted to see so much more of her. Raul Coley is dead episode 4. But these 2 episodes, man, Tanaya Miller as Victorine in episode 5, there is the whole ending of that episode, and then to bring that into episode 6, and you really threw me off with the Samantha Sloyan. That was good. I like that.
Thank you.
But her role as Tamerlan and her meltdown to end episode 6 is just freaking brilliant. And then just to tie it all around, we finally get like some juicy stuff for Mary McDonnell to do, which was a topic that we brought up in our last video, that, like, Chris had even mentioned how Willa Fitzgerald is killing it as young Madeline. And up until really episodes 5 and 6, we hadn't really gotten a lot of Mary McDonnell as the adult Madeline.
Right.
Mark Hamill has just kind of been living on the periphery. And he gets finally some like real good stuff to do. And
right.
And then it comes back to the 2 linchpins of this series, which are Carlo Gugino and really fucking Bruce Greenwood, man, who, if, we always joke around, if there's any justice in the world, these people would get, nominated for something. If Bruce Greenwood doesn't get an Emmy nomination for this show, then like what are we even doing anymore? Like why are we even hosting award shows
Yes.
if nobody's going to recognize the greatness that he's performing here other than just us and like the horror community? It's absurd.
Yeah. Really, really well put. You know, what I liked about what you said, Danny, is that you said that every single Flana family cast member gets their time to shine and really stand out. And what was interesting about episodes 1 through 4 is that I always felt like Samantha Sloyan didn't really grab my attention throughout those episodes. Like I'm like, oh, this actress, like she made such an impression during Midnight Mass. That I was like, okay, she's gonna have this crazy moment, and then she finally does in episode 6. I mentioned this last time that there's like a pattern where each of the siblings, you kind of see their vice, like what's their, thing about them that's corrupt or whatever. They eventually encounter Carlo Gugino. There's this great speech, and then they sort of kill themselves in some kind of way. And I think that the way that Samantha Sloyan, this is obviously a spoiler for this episode, the way that she like melts down and then dies, I think that I just keep going back to that. I just keep thinking about that. There's something about the way that her downfall occurred that it really just sticks with me. That's the part that's standing out for this series for me. But
Yeah.
what I was gonna say was though, um, yeah, I didn't want to say this last time when we talked with Chris. And if you guys haven't seen that episode, you should go check out our episode where we covered episodes 3 and 4 of Fall of the House of Usher with Chris, future boy Chris. But there is a pattern where the siblings are dying off in order, right? They're going from the youngest to the oldest, and they're also going from the siblings that are considered the bastards of the family to the children of Usher that were from his first marriage. And there's this great sequence in episode 5. I think it's like maybe even the first scene or the second scene where the 3 original siblings are sitting in a bar talking with each other, and you really get to see these like veteran Flanagan actors just sitting talking with each other in this bar. It's just this great scene, and Tanaya Miller hasn't been around as long as Samantha Sloyan or Henry Thomas, but she steals that scene with her little monologue.
Yeah. I I was blown away by her. I'd never really seen her before Bly Manor,
Right.
and I was blown away with her performance as Hannah Grace in Bly Manor. Uh,
Hmm.
really, you pitched the idea of covering that show, The Periphery,
Right.
and
Peripheral.
the Peripheral, and
Mhm.
if she was not on that show, I probably wouldn't have given it the time that we did for
Right.
that first season. But she dominated in that show as like one of
Hmm.
like the villains, and she's so good in this show. She kind of lurks again in the background of those first few episodes, and then she just comes out. And this episode 5, The Telltale Heart, she's hearing the noise. You can see like it's starting to eat away at her psyche from like the very beginning, and you kind of know something happens between her and her significant other, the other doctor, but the show does such a great job of misdirecting you away from
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
And again, you have those little interactions with her and Carla Gugino, who in this scene she's the patient who needs the transplant or the new procedure. And that final image of Bruce Greenwood walking into the office and seeing her and seeing the dead body of her significant other with the heart implant in her, just pumping dead
Hmm.
flesh, is just absolutely insane. Like you don't expect to see those things on TV.
Yes.
And her, just the way Tanaya Miller acts with her eyes and her facial reactions, just absolutely unbelievable. When she kills her, when she stabs herself, and then all of a sudden you could tell the second she like delivers like the final blow to herself, all of a sudden all the dementia, the craziness goes away and she has that one moment of daddy, and then it's just like, oh God.
Yep.
I wanted to bring up because it really hit me at the end of episode 5. And it's something that I remember reading on Twitter a few days ago. And it really made me think about like Netflix and the way Netflix does things. Because you brought up when the episode ends, usually it's like Usher child dies and then boom, fall of the House of Usher.
Right.
But if you notice, they leave the sound on. And the problem with Netflix is they want you to binge. So if you're like, oh, that's so creepy, I want to watch the credits. If you're not quick with the remote, and you don't slide over to watch credits, it just auto pushes you into the next episode. And that's so infuriating because you could tell Mike Flanagan strategically planned these scenes to end so that the credits mean something. The noise of just that heart pumping in the dead woman's chest and that fleshy, like, that's playing in the background, and it's such a disturbing image. And I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. And then it's like, we've been fans of Mike Flanagan now for a decade. We've watched all these Netflix series. These names to us are recognizable. Michael Fimignari, who either directs the episodes or he's his DP. The Newton brothers, who do the score in every episode. But we know almost every cast member of this show, from the most important characters to the minor characters. They're members of the Flana family. We want to look at these credits, and Netflix is like, well, you better slide it over because if you fumble your remote, guess what? Next episode. And you're like, son of a bitch.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because like Netflix essentially started this whole streaming thing. Now there's everything, Max and Paramount Plus, but the binge model, I've never liked it. I know that it's fun if you want to catch up with something that's been on TV before and you just kind of go through the whole series. Let's watch the next one, right? But I just have not liked the idea of, it all came out, let's all watch it, and then let's forget about it 2 weeks from now, or not even 2 weeks.
I think you hit the nail on the head, where binging is something that should be saved for that show that you missed. That you want to, everybody's talking about it. It was on a year or so ago. So I'll give you a perfect example, because you and everyone else won't stop telling me to watch Succession. It's over, right? The series is done.
Yes.
So now I can just go and binge Succession because it's over. I can now just catch up. I gave up on Lost when it was on. And then when Athena and I got together, she was like, well, I want you to watch Lost. So back in the old days, I used DVDs and I just binged Lost, like episode after episode after episode. And that saved that show for me, because if I had to wait 6 days to watch another episode, I would have given up again.
Yes.
But I used to be on the binge train. I used to love the idea of an entire show dropping and just being able to watch it. I do think there are positives and negatives. I think I've come more around now to the idea of shows. I like the model that I think it's Hulu or Amazon Prime do, where they'll give you like the first 2 episodes. Disney Plus also does this with some of the Marvel shows. They'll get our Star Wars shows. We're going to give you the first 2 episodes, like a nice 1.5 to 2 hour chunk. And then you're going to wait a week, and then it'll be weekly. And it allows us to decompress, to talk about it, to it brings back water cooler discussion, which, for all of Lost's faults, Lost really was the king of water cooler discussion. And you can't do that. That's why I'm so glad we're taking this show slowly.
Amen. Exactly. And because like this show, if this was out once a week, everyone would be talking about this show like episode by episode, and they in particular be talking about the deaths, right? And they'd be like doing our thing that you and I do sometimes on this channel, but me and Brian definitely do on the other channel, Comic Books Transform, where we do like fantasy booking, where we're like, oh, what's gonna happen? How are they gonna do the Telltale Heart? How are they gonna do, the
Goldbug.
Cask of
Yeah.
Amontillado? It's funny because in Austin last during the summer, they had this special Edgar Allan Poe event that was in this like historical house in Austin, and Sherry and I went to it. And it was this amazing, amazing event where everyone that was invited dressed up. They served Edgar Allan Poe themed cocktails, where each cocktail was like named after Edgar Allan Poe story. Then they had people, actors, basically narrating Edgar Allan Poe stories as you drank the cocktails. And it was this amazing event. It had this kind of red lighting, and they did the Telltale Heart, they did the Black Cat, they did all of these different stories. And the one that always stood out for me for Poe was the Cask of Amontillado. Have you ever read that one? Or know what I'm talking about?
I know it. I have it. So I ordered, and I was listening to. I got an Edgar Allan Poe compilation on Audible.
Okay.
And
Okay.
before this series started, I listened to about, I want to say 5 to 6 Poe stories. I don't
Okay.
think I got to the Cask of. No, I did. That's the one where yeah,
Uh-oh.
I did read. I did read that.
Spoilers. Yeah.
I read that one. I read Pit and the Pendulum. I reread, of course, The Raven, The Mask of the Red Death, and I want to say Murders in the Rue Morgue, but I might have gotten stuck in the middle of that one.
Yeah. And we should do a little shout out here too. We have a watcher, Bush 1G. Hey, what's up? Have a great stream. You know what, Bush? We are having a great stream, and thank you for joining us. I was gonna say though that the Cask of Amontillado, I remember like reading it when I was like in middle school, because I think we did some Poe in middle school. And as you watch the young Usher and his brother, it's like, okay, that's where they're going with this one. And Michael Trucco, that's his fate. And in these two episodes, episodes 5 and 6, they start alluding to, oh, there's something that happened in 1980 that some kind of thing. And we know from previous episodes that something bad happened. They essentially went to Verna's bar to cover up the fact that they committed some kind of crime, and they want people to see them at this bar. No,
Well,
they're there.
you've read the House of Usher, right?
I have not.
Because the House of Usher is about Roderick Usher lives in his castle. He's visited by an old college friend of his, and Usher is starting to go crazy because his sister, I think, either died or he entombed his sister in a coffin, and he hears her voice. And so Roderick in the show is sitting in front of that brick wall.
Yes.
Which leads me to believe that somebody's been entombed in that brick wall. Maybe it's Michael Trucco. Maybe it's Verna, who's Carla Gugino's character, according to the credits, even though we've never actually seen her name.
Right.
Something, yeah. And that goes back to, Mary McDonnell and Mark Hamill, the idea that Mark Hamill gives this really good backstory about how I investigated every bar within walking distance, and there was no bar. There was no bartender. And now you're just now, obviously you have the unfaithful narrator,
right,
being that it's Usher, and he even hints to Dupin that he's being told how these people died. His children died from them in after death.
Right.
So it's just this amazing tapestry of Poe work doubling up. There's this amazing line that Usher says where he has you brought up that lemon speech that he does,
right,
and he does this. He tells the story of Arthur Gordon Pym.
There you go. Okay.
When he talks about how who Pym is and why you hire him,
right?
And he tells the story of how Pym went on this journey when he was in his 20s, basically around the world from the Arctic to Antarctica and back. And I wrote it down. He said like he told Tammy that the earth was hollow, and he found an island at the top of the world that he called Ultima Thule. It was a realm of beings that lived beneath us and out of time. And I
Right.
Googled that, and it's from Poe.
Okay. Oh, it is from Poe. That's
But my
interesting.
first thought when I heard that is, wow, that sounds like Lovecraft.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it made me think about the connection between like Poe and Lovecraft,
Yes.
and like how obviously Lovecraft was inspired by some of Poe's work, and just like this idea that maybe there are these places where the earth gives you a glimpse of like a time beyond, or the people beyond, or beings from beyond space and time.
Yeah.
And you take that idea back to this show where maybe that's what Verna is. You have that great breakdown of those photographs where here she is with all of these rich entrepreneurial magnates, not just from USHER, but and not just from current events like Zuckerberg, but going back to Vanderbilt and Rockefeller and
Yeah.
all these pharmaceutical magnates going back to 1901. So maybe she's a being that lived beneath and out of time from Ultima Thule. It's this, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
I was so angry because the last night I got home and I actually had like hours to spend before I went out,
Right.
and I finished episode 6, and
Okay.
I was like, I want to keep going. I want to keep going. I want to keep going. But shit, I'm not going to keep going because
Good.
I don't want to lose what I
Yes.
have in my head before we get to our discussion. So,
Yes, yes. I'm so glad that you kept the pact because I actually haven't watched the last 2 episodes either, and I've been dying to. I haven't really had a lot of free time to watch them though. Um, on a side note, Sherry and I actually started watching Talk to Me last night, and so we're gonna finish that tonight. I'm really digging that. I got to get caught up with my horror movies, and then also I know that like When Evil Lurks came out on Shudder this week, and then
yes,
also there's
warning to everyone: When Evil Lurks is streaming on Shutter.
yeah, but
Go in at your own risk. Uh,
yeah, but
I
what's
also want to give. I also have to give Screenbox a shout out because I've
sure.
been up since 6 a.m. New York time,
Yes.
and they just put up on Screenbox Trick or Treat from 1986, the Sammy Kerr movie,
Oh, okay.
the movie about the rock star who died in a fire, and you play his record backwards and he comes to life. That movie has been like one of the ultimate blind spots for me as a horror fan. It
Yeah.
just wasn't. After VHS, it's just never been released anywhere.
Oh, that's cool.
It's never been on streaming. I don't think there was ever a physical release until like maybe last year by one of like those, like a Shout Factory or a Vestron. One of those put out like a good one, but it was like
Yeah.
really expensive. So I'm finally watching like freaking Trick or Treat from 1986, which is awesome.
Nice. Yeah, and that's referenced in Search of Darkness too, and I think they've even talked about it on uh one of the Red Letter Media videos, like the review or whatever. Yeah, yeah, and actually I want to check that out too because I've always heard about that. But it's so funny that you mentioned that Pym's backstory sounded like a Lovecraft story to you because that's exactly what I thought when Bruce Greenwood was talking about it. I was like, oh, are they kind of going into this Lovecraft territory? But the thing is that's so interesting to me is that there seems to be like this through line where it's like you go from Poe to Lovecraft to King, and I'm sure there's people in the between those two, but those are like sort of like the bright stars or maybe the black holes that stand out there. Those particular horror writers, those iconic horror writers, and Flanagan's obviously adapted many King stories. There's many people from this mini series that are going to be in Life of Chuck, which everyone's talking about right now. That's like the next Flanagan thing everyone's going to be into. But there is that line that goes from like Poe to Lovecraft to King, and it kind of mirrors this line that Verna has gone through, where she's essentially going through all these different super rich people that are also kind of corrupt, right? Or that people think of as corrupt. And what's interesting for me is that not all those people have met with gruesome deaths. I think the majority of them actually haven't. They're real true people. Like this is a sequence where they could have done a scene where Mark Hamill comes in with the evidence and it's all fictional characters. And it's like, oh, David, white paper, and he died by getting decapitated, and I said David White paper because there's a fucking notebook in front of me, but like they could have made up all these fictional characters, kind of like they did in Oculus with all the people that were killed by the Lasser glass mirror. But these are real people. So that makes me wonder what Verna's purpose is. Like, what does she do? Because it's not like she has slaughtered everyone the way she has done with the USHER family. So like, what makes them special to her? And so I think that, like, just in the interest of time, 'cause I know you got to go pretty soon too, we should just kind of talk about highlights from these two particular episodes. With this episode, with the Telltale Heart, we really see Victorine take this kind of sinister turn, and she seemed the most noble out of the siblings, at least to me, at first. She seemed like she genuinely wanted to do good for her father, but as you see, she you know forges Carla Gugino. Oh, no, she forges the wife's signature, right?
Yeah.
And I bring that up because what's interesting is you have these two stories essentially. You have this current story where all the siblings die, and then you have this flashback story where you see Usher's rise to power. And there are little mirror moments between both stories. Like her forging the signature, that's kind of like the scandal that Usher uncovers where his signature was forged when he was
Yeah.
younger, right? And then like I think it might have been even in episodes 3 or 4, but there's a part where Usher's talking to all of his children that are still alive, and he's like, "We're under attack, battle stations." And Michael Trucco says that exact line in that same episode too. So there's kind of like this mirroring between the two. With Tanaya Miller, she has these sequences with Carla Gugino where Carla Gugino seems sort of innocent and doesn't know what's going on, and Tanaya Miller's kind of taking advantage of her. And once again, Carla Gugino gets to do a speech about some kind of aspect of humanity that's messed up. And in this case, she's talking about like pharmaceutical companies and experimentation and just people getting taken advantage by the system. So Flanagan, he's obviously commenting on specific things with this show, and like he picked specific people to reference in those pictures, like where he's like, "Oh, see these people, they're real evil bastards."
Yeah.
He's not being very
Yeah.
subtle about it.
And I felt very similar with the way Carl Gugino interacts with Samantha Slyon in episode 6, Goldbug.
Yes.
And what I also, one of the continuing things is anytime you have seen an Usher child show a glimpse of humanity or positivity, it's almost immediately erased the second the screws start to get put to them.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
Camille, like loses it almost immediately, and that idea of like absolute power corrupting, absolutely,
Good
the
point.
idea of money corrupting people, you get that with Camille when Carla Gugino reveals herself as the security guard and won't let her in right away. Her first thought is to say, "I'm rich and powerful and I'll have you fired." Raul Coley goes into the animal rescue place and he goes, "I don't think you know who I am. I'll buy you a new animal hospital if it means you give me this fucking cat." Uh, you know, what's her name? Tanaya Miller is like, you think she's in love with her significant other, her wife or her girlfriend or whoever, whatever their relationship is exactly, but they're like partners in this business with the medical, with the heart. And the second it gets, the second there's even the hint, they all bring up the NDAs. They all bring up the "I can replace you," So, and oh my God, Henry fucking Thomas now torturing his wife who has no skin anymore,
Yeah.
and like when he celebrated getting the spare, I fucking died. I almost I think I laughed out loud when that scene happened
Right.
because like and then he goes in and he's like, okay, honey, go to school, mommy's fine. And then he's like, okay, you little lying bitch. And he,
Mhm.
oh my God, it's like
Yeah.
every character, every Usher kid has the same trajectory of like, I'm not as bad as they think I am until the slightest bit of pressure is put on me, and then I'm just as bad as you think we are, and
Yeah.
probably much more so.
Yes.
And you know what's interesting is when you look at those flashbacks, Roderick seems to be the good one. Like
I know.
Madeline is, from the minute you meet her, even as a kid, she's like, she even makes that. She has that speech early on in the series where she talks about how we went to live with that foster family and they were the worst, but I became their favorite, and that's how I, you know, figured out all of their dirty secrets and got them arrested.
Right.
And Roderick appears to be like this loving family man. He always brings up like the beautiful, lovely Annabelle Lee, and he has his kids, and he doesn't want. He gets kind of pulled into this, like, whatever they're planning with Michael Trucco's character and that whole Fortunato uh, plan. And then all of his kids are just like the worst sides of. They're like they almost inherit all of their grandfather, who, if we go back all the way to episode 1, Robert Longstreet,
Yeah.
he's that Fortunato typical, like, wealthy industrialist. Like his face might as well have been in one of those pictures with Carlo Gugino.
Yeah. Really good point. Yeah. And he meets a tragic end, that's for sure. Kind of gruesome end. Yeah. Um, it's funny because you and Chris were talking about Henry Thomas and you were kind of questioning his casting in that particular role last episode, right? And then all of a sudden he takes this sinister turn in these episodes. And, it's like, oh, this is like real juicy. It's real enjoyable. So sinister. I've compared the show to Succession already a few times on here. The way that Henry Thomas and Samantha Soyan come off, they seem like they're almost like from Succession. He's kind of this goofy guy at first, and you know, eh, there's a lot of characters on Succession that are bad people, but they're sort of like oblivious or kind of like they don't know what they're doing, or they don't know things that like obvious like people just know obviously like regular people, but because they're so rich, they're sort of oblivious to.
You know
And
who he kind of reminds me of in the way Henry Thomas has acted this series so far?
who's that?
He reminds me of Fredo Corleone.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, there you go. It's a good
He's a very,
example.
yeah, where it's like he's too almost too stupid to be evil at first.
Yeah.
And but then, Fredo has his moments in the first 2 Godfather movies where, like, oh yeah, he's like a slime ball, and he's a member of the Corleones. And we really see that, once once Henry Thomas starts pounding the cocaine.
Yeah. His true colors come out, and Samantha Soyan, she kind of reminds me of, and it's, I think this is intentional. She's got red hair, and the main female sibling on Succession is Shiv, and she has red hair too, and she reminds me of Shiv a lot, which that's definitely a compliment for Samantha Soyan. But even her relationship with her husband on this show is very similar to Shiv's relationship with her husband on Succession, where her husband kind of seems more innocent. He seems sort of more, I don't know, like a normal person, but then from like a different part of the country, or not necessarily from wealth. And so he doesn't have that kind of mindset that like rich people do. And then, she's always kind of like talking down to him because he is not from wealth like she is. And for a while there, I didn't realize that the guy Bill, who's from Built or whatever, that he's the guy with the beard from Midnight
Midnight Mass.
Mass.
Yeah, Matt Beidel, or Beadle or Beidel. He's got, yeah, in Midnight Mass, he's Samantha Slan's like right hand man.
Yeah.
And he's, yeah, got the big beard. Um, I think they have some really great scenes together. And I just the episode with her where like she's having this like sleep disorder almost, where she's like falling asleep and missing time, and like she'll fill up her coffee cup and then like blink and her coffee cup is empty, and she's like,
Yeah.
just incredible editing in that episode.
Yes.
And
That go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say, like, the build up to her death is so slow and drawn out and painful to watch.
Yeah.
And and again, another one of those scenes where whenever you get sucked in to just how fucking good Carl Lumley and Bruce Greenwood are, and they're sitting there and they're talking, and you get sucked into this dialogue, and then all of a sudden a fucking body drops in every time, and it gets you because you're just not expecting it, because you're like, oh, the two older men are talking now, we're gonna slow it down, and then
Right.
boom. And like the way that Flanagan does I guess we can call them like jump scares, where like a character, like I think it was the scene at the beginning of episode 5 where they're at the funeral and you just pull back, and like the Perry's dead, like melting corpse is in front of him, and
Yeah.
like where he says to I think it's his granddaughter, he's like, you don't see them, and then like you just see the 4 dead Usher children behind. It's just,
Yeah.
oh man, it
Yeah. I didn't mention.
he still gives you the chills with that. And I think Samantha Slan's death is the one that hit me the most, in the sense that it was so drawn out, and that final moment is like almost a beautiful moment in some horrific way,
Right. Exactly.
with all
Exactly.
the mirrors.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I didn't mention this when we were talking with Chris, but that's one of the things I've loved about the jump scares in those sequences is that you're grown to expect jump scares at a certain point. You know, from watching so many horror movies, but they'll literally be in the middle of a sentence and the thing will pop up. You know, like they'll just be talking like, and that's why I invested so much into that. It'll be, you know, and then
You knocked out your own connection. Uh-oh. Pete tried to make a jump scare reference and knocked out apparently his own connection. What I'll say with Flanagan's jump scares, since I'm still apparently on here, is that it goes back to Hill House. The best jump scare that I could ever remember is Kate Siegel and Elizabeth Reeser driving to Hill House, arguing, and Nell popping out through the back seat. I've watched the series 4 or 5 times. I know it's coming. It gets me every time. I don't know where Pete is, so I think I think we tied up a lot of the story that we were going to talk about with episodes 5 and 6. The only thing I'll add is that for episode 6, if you've ever seen Cult of Chucky, Tamerlane's death is very similar to an awesome death scene in Cult of Chucky, where Chucky ties a patient down in the asylum and breaks the glass above her, and she has to stare and watch as the glass comes down and decapitates her. So 2 episodes left. I cannot wait to watch episodes 7 and 8, and I know Pete can't wait to watch them either. I have to get going, so thank you for watching, and stay tuned for our final episode, where we cover the last 2 episodes, episodes 7 and 8 of The Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix. This has been Danny from the Lassercast speaking for Pete. We'll see you very soon.